I'm a generative AI and LLM engineer, also currently researcher at Carnegie Mellon University. I'm looking for a job. So here I have a job, one of the job as a generative AI engineer. Um, but I also thought I have the knowledge, but it'll be nice if I can get some help, some mentor coaching, right, for the interviews. So let's do that. Okay, so let's get some mock coaching. Okay, so this sounds all right. Mock interview generative AI. Okay, this looks good, promising. Okay, so let's go to the home page. Okay, I would definitely like to have AI mentors, right? And of course, machine learning. Why not? And generative AI. And yeah, leave that. Yeah, this is good. Of course, English is what I prefer because I only know English. And of course, I know some Indian language, but I prefer to do. Okay, wow, $300 per month, eh? um, wow, and $180. Yeah, not bad. And $350 per month. Hmm, it's decent money, but good money. I don't want to spend. I rather spend on my Starbucks coffee. Um, okay, can I go to YouTube and see if there are any mentors or the interview coach who can help me to prepare for my generative AI and LLM engineer? Let's try that. Go to YouTube. I don't know. I want to give a shot. Oops, sorry. Some videos already playing on. Huh. I know Angelina Jolie. Who is the other girl? Just kidding. Megan Fox, right? How about if I have them as one of them as my generative AI and LLM coach? It'll be fun, right? Um, okay, I'm loyal. I'm a fan of Angelina Jolie, so I think I'll pick her as my generative AI and LLM coach. So let's do that, right? Why not? Okay, so I created an Angelina coach agent. That's good. So let's see the, you know, I have the code, already did that. So let's run actually. I'm going to run the call interviewer, which is nothing but it's just a script just to make it, easy. And I'll show you what exactly it has. Just a script. Uh, I'm a lazy developer. I'm sure some of us can relate to that. So just run the PDF create. What it does is, so let's get to the job description, right, which I'm trying to prepare. So this is what I'm trying to prepare. Okay, so let's copy all the requirements for this Adobe client, Adobe company. So let me copy this. I'm going to paste in my code. Uh, okay, just the GD text, right? Just copy this, the whole requirement. Bingo. Now I copy the requirement. So what it is now, the next step is I'm going to generate this job description requirements and responsibility into a PDF. And that's what we're going to use that. And that is basically it converts by having a script. You see pdf create.py. It just creates a PDF file because we are feeding the PDF to my large language model. And once you convert, you feed that model to the LLM, and of course we use a RAG, retrieval augment generation. But let's take a step backwards at 10,000 feet level and see run the scripts. So you create the PDF create, and then you run the bot, which is the agent. So let's run the command, which I already running it. So now, what is the port is running? Okay, it is the port running. So let's do that. 7860. That's good. Okay, so I'm going to connect that, and hopefully it works, right? I don't know. Hello, are you there?
Hi, Kevin. Yes, I'm here. I'm Angelina. Think of me as your senior interview coach for this session. Warm, direct, and very focused on helping you get sharper for a senior GenAI engineer interview. This is a practice interview, not a judgment. I'll ask real, role-specific questions based on the kind of work this job expects. Post-training, evaluation, serving, agentic systems, and the ML fundamentals underneath all of it. After each answer, I'll tell you what's already strong, what to tighten, and how a top candidate would frame it. We'll keep it crisp, conversational, and useful. Let's begin. First question. Imagine you're building a post training pipeline for a frontier LLM that will ship to billions of users. Walk me through how you design the pipeline end to end, from data curation to SFT to preference optimization, evaluation, and finally serving readiness.
Oh boy, that's a very long, complex question. Can you start something smaller, Angelina? Because let's warm up, right? With some simpler, like, I don't know, overfitting, that kind of questions in ML.
Absolutely. Smart instinct. Warm ups matter. Let's make it simple. What is overfitting? Why does it happen? And what are the main ways you detect and reduce it in a machine learning model? Take your time. Answer like you would in an interview.
Thank you for that question. Overfitting is basically when the model trains on the training data and it's having a high performance, but falters on the validation data and the performance drops down. That could be because the model understood the patterns, just memorized the patterns, and based on the noise, but not didn't learn much about the signal. Then what happens is it performed well on the training data, but when you feed the new validation or test data, apparently the model is memorized and you see the new data, it doesn't perform well. So how do we, that's a problem, right? So how do we mitigate? Some of the mitigation techniques for overfitting is, you can use regularization such as L1 or L2. You can also use dropout for a dropout for a neural network, and of course early stopping. Dropout is basically taking off some of the nodes randomly, so that the model is forced to train the data with a given set of nodes. And also, yeah, I think, and also, yeah, another, you can also gather more data if it is real data, or you can use augment the data by generating the synthetic data. But of course, real data is preferred, but and enterprises, it's more slow and time consuming. So that's why we fall back to synthesize data for the neural network. um, does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. And the core idea is right. What was strong? You clearly defined the gap between train and validation performance, and you named the right mitigation levers: regularization, dropout, early stopping, more data, augmentation. That's a solid base. Now let me sharpen it, because in a real interview, they'll want a cleaner structure and a little more precision. The main thing to tighten is your framing. A stronger answer separates three parts very clearly: what overfitting is, how you detect it, and how you reduce it. Also, say the model learned noise or spurious patterns rather than understood the patterns. That sounds more technically crisp. A top candidate might say it like this: overfitting is when a model fits the training data too closely, including noise and idiosyncratic patterns, so it has low training error but poor generalization on unseen data. I detect it by comparing training and validation metrics. If training performance keeps improving while validation plateaus or degrades, that's a classic sign. To reduce it,
Yeah, I got the gist. Yeah, thank you for that feedback. uh, I really appreciate that. Okay, so now you got that right. So now the agent, obviously in this case, Angelina Jolie, is actually helping me how I can prepare and better, for some of the behavioral as well as technical skills. So let's see the code, what we have, right? How the architecture, So here's the prompt I've given. This is a prompt, you're Angelina Jolie, and of course, acting as a senior GenAI engineer interviewer. And I gave some prompts, keep the conversation crisp, and also don't be preachy, you know. And also, it also gives the visual feedback as well, and also as a coach. And some of the very generic, broad, fallback hard questions, Of course, the LLM takes from the GD, job description, and ask the questions. Um, and it's very dynamic, So this is the codes. So run bot. So I'm actually using a Pipecat. It's a library, as you can see, Pipecat library. Here it is, Pipecat. So Pipecat is an orchestration library. It takes it uses Deepgram and of course LLM and also Cartesia. So Deepgram is a speech to text which converts when we talk. It converts speech to text and fed to the large language model. In this case, I'm actually using OpenAI GPT 5.4, and Cartesia is a text to speech back. So Cartesia converts, uh, the text LM response back to the speech. I'm also using Silaro VAD, which is a voice activation detection, so that when I talk, I would like agent to stop and listen to me, right? That's how it is. And let's see yeah, this is the overview of Pipecat, and you can definitely, uh, this is some of the concepts, frames, and stuff like that. So let's see the code, right? Um, so run bot, and then you have the Deepgram, Cartesia, and also I'm using OpenAI LLM service. And more importantly, in my previous videos, I've shown to use OpenAI directly, but now I want to be smart, right? No, I'm just kidding, because at most enterprises, making a API call is not allowed for the security reasons, and that's not really uh, complex or fun, right? You want to do via more secure. So I chose Azure, as I work in a lot of Azure workshops. So let's go to Portal Azure. So I already created some of the resource groups. So you can see the resource already created. And I'm going to use a Microsoft Foundry. It used to be called Azure AI Foundry. Microsoft changed the name, so it's hard to keep track of the naming convention, right? Anyway, so nevertheless, so I created the Microsoft or Azure AI Foundry resource. So let's go to the Microsoft Foundry portal. Wow, I see. So I see the portal, and I created an agent. So you can use either of them actually, GPT 5.4, which is the same as the interview coach. So if you go to GPT 0.4, actually let's go to the agent, because that's what I'm interested in, interview coach. So you would see the endpoint here. So the agent name is interview coach, of course, the endpoint. So I'm actually calling this endpoint. If you go to the env, yeah, you can go to the env, you see some of the uh, OpenAI keys. You can see these are the endpoints. So I'm actually invoking, so let's go to the bot. I don't want to show the API keys. So I'm not directly invoking the API endpoints to the OpenAI. Rather, I'm actually invoking a endpoint in Azure, of course, obviously Microsoft Azure AI Foundry. So what happens is the data is secure within the Foundry, and you're making call to the Azure Foundry, and the Foundry is that's where uh, Foundry makes, as you know, Foundry gives all the OpenAI services, and of course other LLMs also. And for some reason, if you decide to make a change instead of a model GPT, you can always change to non-GPT. You can always come back and you can select a different model. As you can see, I added a GPT 5.4. You can actually change. You can create a go to discover, and then you can choose a model other than OpenAI, like Mistral or Anthropic, or let's say Claude, Grok, DeepSeek. There's a bunch of models, right? As you can see. So that's the difference from my previous videos. I was able to do, as you can see, instead of calling OpenAI, of course you're calling OpenAI, but this is actually Azure endpoint, not the, as you can check. Of course, Pipecat is giving me those libraries to invoke. As you can see, this is some of the libraries I didn't clean it up. That's how we, most developers, but we clean towards the end. And I have a thread, actually. You can see there's a daemon thread. That's when we initialize the RAG, retrieval augmented generation database. So we feed the JD into the Pinecone. Let's see the Pinecone RAG. So retrieval augmented JS database. So it connects to the RAG. That's how you basically create an index, and then you search the query, and of course you give the text when, as I speak, the LLM agent and goes and search the query based on the chunk text. I'm using some of the chunking strategy. Is I'm actually using maximum sentences per chunk, meaning I'm using default 5 sentences per chunk. That is one of the chunking strategy. We can always change, chunking strategies. And I'm using NLTK, natural language token, to chunk it. And upsert is like just like a insert, it replaces if it's already existing. Um, Coming back to BOT, yeah, you can see we have the prompt, and then uh, calls Deepgram, Cartesia, OpenLLM service, LLM context, and then you have pipeline. And I also made a change to video capture processor. What it does is the agent actually can see my visual, whether I'm calm or composed or nervous. It's like a real interview. Uh, you know, that'll be fun, right? Who doesn't want Angelina Jolie interview you and coach you? More importantly, and you can see I also have Twilio, so in case I can actually extend if I want to more of a voice call, you can always extend to Twilio so that you can call and the agent can coach you on the phone. And WebRTC is basically a web real-time communication protocol, and WebSocket is another, as you know, sockets communication. I'm using fast API so that it's a, as you know, it's a Python server library. It's more of scalable so that more than one person can actually call the agent, and agent can spawn a thread and take the calls. Yeah, I think that's in a nutshell. And of course, pipeline task, this is the entry point, as you can see, WebRTC transport. And what else? Let's see. Yeah, the PDF is generated when I invoke the PDF create. It's very simple. All I did is uh, yeah, this is basically to replace some of the, you can see, single quotes to uh, those more of replacing the bad characters. When you convert from text to PDF, I was getting some error. I just have to replace the uh, yeah, probably ASCII related, and then you create and I use a PyPDF. Actually, PyPDF, sorry, PyPDF is more of a PDF processing. So FPDF seems to be another library, Pythonic library, so you can create a PDF afresh. And the reason is I'm feeding a PDF. So with this, what happens is all you do is take out any requirement. You can replace this, any job requirement. Suppose instead of this, let's go back to some other jobs. Okay, this is good. Let's go to some jobs. Yeah, Royal Bank, or even Nvidia, right? Which is favorite, I guess. So you can replace that, and you can run the command. So PDF create and the bot, bingo, you have the Angelina Jolie coach you for the next upcoming Nvidia interview. Thank you. That's all I want to cover.